Okay, so good afternoon to those who are joining us at Learn Free today. We've been having a good day, and today we have with us Alice and Krish who are going to answer any questions that are put to them today. So I'm going to spotlight the two of you. Where's Krish gone? There. Okay, spotlight the two of you. Unless you'd prefer gallery, but on the recording it will actually do speaker view only, but just the way it is. So first, Alice, would you like to introduce yourselves? You can either have one introduce you both, or you can each say a little bit.
Yeah, we can both say a little bit. Hi, so I'm Alice Kimasia, and this is my husband Krish, and we've been home educating our 4 boys for about 14 years. I think now they're 21, 20, 17 and 11. So the younger 2 never went to school, and Noah, our 17-year-old, has just gone to college this year. So that's his first year in a kind of formal institutionalized learning setting, which has been an interesting transition. And Zephyr 11 is still learning from home. And yeah, what else can I say? We live in Coventry, so if anyone's coming to the day on Saturday, I will be there and glad to meet you. Krish, do you want to say anything about your profession?
Yeah, so Alice has already introduced our kids, and yeah, I'm Krish. I'm married to Alice, obviously, and by profession I'm a maths teacher, and I also teach academic English at Cov University, and I'm learning. We were talking yesterday in one of the sessions about learning, and we never stop learning, and I'm learning how to code at the moment, so there we go.
I guess it's also sorry, I was going to say it's also useful perhaps to say that we've taken quite an organic child-led approach to our home education, that we've sought to follow our children's interests and to kind of build learning around just living life together. So that might give you a bit of an insight into our particular approach. But we're here to answer your questions this afternoon.
And I want to just add that Alice has done things like TEDx talks, and she has her organic education. Is it still a blog, Alice?
Well, it's evolved into a Facebook page, really.
Okay.
So you can find me on Facebook at Organic Education.
And you've also been on TV, so you're practically famous.
Yes, we have. There's a BBC documentary that we featured in that you can still watch, I think, on BBC iPlayer, called Our Big Home Education Family, which we were quite well, a little bit anxious about, but
it was quite a positive
one in the end. Stereotypes. Yeah, it was. So yeah, do check it out if you haven't seen it.
So the theme of this session is Ask Us Anything, and this is exactly what Alice and Krish would like you to do. So this is not the time to hold back or be shy. Anything that you've been thinking about, worrying about, think is too stupid to ask, anything at all, this is the place, and it's a safe place because we've all been there. We've all gone through different parts of the journey in different ways, different timing, and sometimes felt a bit thick about things, but you know, hopefully we can help you, and you don't need to sort of worry about anyone's opinion of you, because this is a totally safe space. And any questions you ask here, that there might be somebody catching it up who wishes they'd asked that question. So please don't be shy at all to ask your questions. And we just had a comment here from Stacey saying it was really good for their children to see on BBC as they were new to it. So that's really good to see. You know, you can be normal, you can be home educated and be normal and not growing. People sometimes look at you as if you're growing horns and you have a little tail, but actually no horns. No. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to kick off, Alice, because the theme of the conference is Truth Bomb, the transformative power of home education. How would you say and you can both have your turn answering this. How would you say home education has transformed maybe not only your family, but you and Krish as well?
Oh, that's a good question. I found it a really transformational journey for me personally, as well as for our family relationships, and for the relationships within our family, because it's changed the way that I think about children and the way that I think about learning. It's changed the way that I see myself as a learner, and my own position in the interaction with my children. It's changed the way that I look at institutions, not just schools, but like more general institutions within society. I feel like it's helped me to connect more with myself and with the things that are important to me. In particular, being outside, being quiet, and being okay with that I'm an introvert person. And yeah, it's kind of helped me to just feel more confident about it being okay to be our own unique selves. It has been a real journey, actually. I think it is for every family that embark on such an adventure. Yeah, it's changed our relationships within our family. I think that because you're around each other a lot, it's been really interesting to see the relationships between our boys, especially as they've got older, and particularly the relationship with their youngest brother, because there's 10 years between our eldest and youngest. And sometimes I think that if they had been in school, they wouldn't have had the same opportunity to get to know him and to spend as much time with him, especially when he was little. So that's been really valuable. And also the relationship with grandparents. My parents have been really involved with the boys, and I've had opportunity to spend much more time with them and to be much more involved in their education. So yeah, all of those things have been really positive.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think being a home educating dad, you're kind of like you don't know everything. You can't possibly know everything. So you're not there to teach your kids everything, but what you are there to do is teach them how to find information, how to learn for themselves, how to ask the right questions, and how to find the answers that you're looking for, how to play, because I think, you know, play is such a big part of learning. And in fact, we just went to, Zephyr and I just went to a the Bloodhound education. Bloodhound is the land speed record project that they're hoping to do sometime in the future. But they have these engineering specialists that can't come in, and they were running a home education session, and they were talking about failing. You know, we've got to help our kids learn how to fail continually to eventually succeed. But part of learning is failing, and I don't think kind of school allows that. You know, they've got to get it right quickly, and they've got to get the answer quickly. But life's problems aren't like that. There aren't any quick fix solutions a lot of the time. So we've got to, you know, so they were building catapults, but it was a brilliant thing because it kept failing, it kept breaking, and I think it teaches us to do the same. We've got to learn how to fail, or keep trying, or keep getting up as well. And that's something that, you know, I'm learning as well, because I kind of feel like I've got to keep learning all the time as well, and I've got to keep an open mind, and I've got to keep this growth mindset that we've all got to have, where we don't I can't possibly learn this. No, we've got to if we're going to model learning, if we're encouraging learning with our kids, we've got to model it ourselves and have that attitude that I've got to learn as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I like what you've said about the failure, because I think that's one of the things that often in school, the approach is that there's only one right answer. And so kids grow up believing there's only one right answer. And if I don't know it, I must be, but I'm not clever enough. And the truth is that most of these big successes, inventions and that kind of thing came out of in some cases out of a fluke, really, just kind of something happened and it made them think, oh, wait a minute, or out of many failures that they finally got it to work. And that ability to persist and to take the time to understand and keep trying. And I think we've lost a lot of that. So I think that's an important one. Thank you for that. So anyone got a question they want to ask? Don't be shy, please. And do use the chat if you are shy.
I'm going to throw one in.
Yeah.
Alice and Krish, we met 2 years ago, I think, probably through an online forum, and you guys have been a huge inspiration to me and my family. I think because I've got boys, you've got boys, but your boys are older, so I felt you were, that little bit further along, and you'd been homesteading for a long time. And I just found a lot of home-ed is, for me, it's about trust in the process, it's going to work. And actually seeing you guys, and I've met your wonderful children, and there is that trust, but there's also, but here's the proof in a way, do you know what I mean? Like, here's this wonderful family and all your boys are thriving. So that's, thank you, because that's really, really helped me. So my question is, like, who's been that for you? Who are you inspired by?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Do you know, when I first started home educating, we lived in Lichfield, which is quite a little town in Staffordshire. And I think there was one other family in Lichfield that home educated, and they didn't have a car. So we didn't really see them at quite a lot of the things that were going on were quite a distance away. It was sort of more lots of people from villages around would meet. So we didn't really see them very much. And there was no social media, which is quite radical now, isn't it, to think? So it was a completely different landscape. And I think it was through Education Otherwise. They had like lists of people. And so we kind of managed to go and visit our nearest gathering, which was in Stafford. But the person who lived next nearest to me, the next nearest home educator, was Harriet Patterson. So I remember having a cup of tea with Harriet Patterson in her kitchen. And I think her youngest then was about 11, like Zephan is now. And she was an unschooler. And I always remember that conversation because it was just so significant to me that, I wasn't alone and there was someone else who'd walked this path. And like you say, she was a bit ahead of me and she had, much more of an established kind of trust and sense of what she was doing. And so I've always remembered that. And so I've always watched her with interest at a distance since, because she moved on and I moved on. And but I know she spoke at the conference the other day and has done some excellent research on children learning to read and has done her PhD and all sorts of amazing things. So she was, there's always people out there who you just remember as being really significant kind of signposts on your journey, who just encouraged you in a certain direction. And I think she helped me to be an unschooler in the sense of trusting my children and following their lead and not needing to grasp a curriculum or, but allowing that to just kind of unfold. I think that sometimes conversations that we have early on are really significant and shape a lot of our thinking and ability to trust. And since then there's been so many people, goodness me, and I'm really very thankful for all the people that I've met in my home education journey, in the various places we've lived, who've walked with us and great friends that we have and have shared different times of our lives with. So yeah, lots of people, but particularly significant conversation with Harriet early on is very memorable. What about you, Krish?
I don't know. I don't really have anyone specific. I think Harriet's one of those people. I also remember Juliet in a conference years ago, and I can't remember the lady's name, but she was she ran a equestrian facility.
Kathy could see.
Yeah, she was really good.
In fact, her daughter's speaking on Saturday.
Ah, right, okay.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I think she was certainly really encouraging because she again took a very sort of unschooling route, and it's quite risky, isn't it, to just kind of let go of any curriculum or let go of any books, or it seems just radical and just most people would think it's completely bonkers and mad. But there was that, but also this kind of inner trust that we were doing the right thing. Like you can, just through observation, you could see our kids were learning. I mean, they weren't learning from a book or anything, and sometimes, yes, maybe, but most of it was through play and tinkering and blowing up things and taking apart a car or a radio or whatever it was. They were doing things like that. And you've got to we kind of had to. Okay, so I've said, I was a maths teacher for a long time, but what I saw was like, okay, well, some of these kids, they've had 11 years of schooling, and some of them still didn't know how to learn. And I think that's what we were trying to achieve. We were trying to help our kids learn how to learn. And I think the purest way of learning how to learn is through play and conversation, really. So it's really, really about having that inner trust in that. And I kind of said to Alice, look, because we didn't really do any much formal maths either. And I said, well, look, let them just play and let them just understand. I mean, you kind of talk about numbers all the time, especially when it comes to sort of pocket money. But it's just through that learning how to learn that they would, and sort of problem solving and whatever else they do through their play, that I knew they would figure it out, because you didn't really specifically teach them fractions or multiplication or whatever it was, but through the course they of life, they sort of pick it up. So it is about having trust in our kids and understanding that they are learning. Obviously, like if you stick them in front of an Xbox all day, they're not going to learn. But if you've also, like Alice talks about this a lot, is that you've got to put things in front of them for them to, like, oh, what, Alice, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a smorgasbord of stuff that they could do. So they might pick up a puzzle, or they might pick up a box of crayons and do some art, but you're kind of like giving this buffet of stuff in front of them, and they'll pick something up, or they'll pick, just recently Zephyr's really got into woodwind instruments, and he wants to play the woodwind instrument, and you've just got to like go with the flow with that. Even though sometimes it can be annoying, you've just got to go with the flow. And so I think it's about observing your kids, and then putting things in front of them that will encourage that kind of passion at that time. And hopefully, you know, and I think as adults, we don't really know ourselves. We don't, sometimes I mean, I'm still struggling to figure out what my passion is and so on. But if we can help our kids kind of find their passion or find their interest because we're sort of facilitating that, that's a brilliant thing to do, isn't it, for our kids?
I think the thing is also is that sometimes your children will start learning something and won't finish it. And that's not a train smash, because it's the process of learning that's important. You know, sometimes we want to push them to finish what they started because that's what we were told when we were kids. But that actual process, and I've had kids who've taken up a bit of this and a bit of that, and that's all firing off all sorts of synapses in the brain, isn't it? I see Jana has her hand up.
Hello. Yeah, I am very much drawn to unschooling, and it's been very reassuring to meet people who are clever and enthusiastic and love their kids and their unschooling. And yeah, I've put in the chat how much I've been encouraged by Kathy's blog. I won't venture to pronounce her surname.
Kutsi.
Kutsi. I was going to ask Krish, as a maths teacher, you know, it's nice to hear maths teachers say, yeah, they don't need a curriculum for maths. Now, I'm a mum of somebody who's got dyslexia. We spent ages on those timetables, and I think we've got them. But you can't do other things without, I mean, some kids will just pick it like that. It wasn't our case. We are now reading, not so much writing at 11 and 9. But vocabulary is amazing, interest in the world, history, amazing. I love my kids, I love unschooling, but I do maths with Life of Fred, okay? And we are just about dividing fractions. I hope I'm not killing it, but I guess I wonder as a maths teacher, because you've got all this curriculum somewhere here, you look and say, they're covering this, they're covering that. But maybe for a dyslexic child, would you say, it's okay to do some curriculum? Or I don't know, I don't want to come across as somebody who's not helped them with this thing that they definitely don't find natural. So I'm not sure what my question is yeah, would you recommend some curriculum for dyslexics? Or
I'm not saying don't use a curriculum, but all I'm saying is you don't have to use a curriculum. So I think when it comes to, like, you just mentioned fractions. So how do you divide fractions? I think the more important thing is the visual concept of how do you divide, let's say, half by 2. What does that look like? And I think you've got to present that first before you get into the numbers. So I always like to look at the visual stuff and figure out what's going on physically before I start getting into the numbers. Because if otherwise there's like you're just playing with numbers and there's no understanding of what's going on. So I like to, if we're doing some maths, I want to talk about it. I want to ask my child, okay, what does that actually mean? How do you draw that physically, or what does that look like? And that's really the important thing. But you know, there's a lot of other things that you can do, because maths is about problem solving. So playing Lego is brilliant. Playing Cluedo is brilliant because you're doing things like elimination,
Deduction.
deduction, and you know, so that comes in useful use when they're solving equations with X. So all of those skills are, even though what's Cluedo got to do with maths? Well, it hasn't really, but some of the skills that you need, or Mastermind, you know,
It's deduction and
it's
logic.
all that deduction stuff. And chess, where you have to sort of like see 3 or 4 moves in advance. All of those things involve maths, or even like things like going to the supermarket, and working out which one is a better value for money. We're all we're all having to do that at the moment, aren't we? But it's all those little things, and I think playing Lego is brilliant because it helps problem solve. So yeah, I mean, I get it, like times table are important, but I think we like, there are other things beyond times tables, like times tables, you can learn them, but it's difficult. I understand that it's difficult to learn them. But beyond that, what do we want our kids to know about maths, and why is it useful for money or finance or opening a savings account or whatever it is? That's so you don't have to do a maths workbook. You can do it in other ways, but I know I can see that a maths workbook is safe, but you know, rather than doing like 20 questions, 20 repetitive questions, I'd rather do 5 and talk about the 2 or 3 in depth, so that the children learn what the concept is.
I think as well,
Thanks a lot. Yeah, sorry.
just to add 2 things. One of the things that Krish always said in our house was like, you really need to have the concrete experience of playing with things and building up concrete concepts in your mind before these things can become abstract, thinking about the way that children develop. So we, you know, like playing with number and with concept and all the things that we've mentioned through the primary years is just so valuable, because when it becomes abstract, it's symbolic, isn't it? So when you get, you know, to high, you know, secondary level maths, moving into that abstraction is so much easier if you've got these kind of solid foundations, because you've played and you've manipulated these things and you've weighed and you've measured and you've built your Lego, and you know, you've got your bank account, you're used to managing your money. Like all these things are such valuable life skills that teach you mathematical thinking.
It's using sort of manipulatives, things that you can tangibly see and feel, that teachers gets the concept into their brains, really.
And then being able to problem solve the problem in front of you when you get to your secondary maths is just so much easier. But the other thing I wanted to say, Joanna, is don't think that like unschooling has to look like this or like that, or, oh, if I'm doing that way, I can't use a curriculum, or nothing is like not allowed, right? Because you're focused on the children in front of you. And if you think, you know, together, this is what we need to do for this, or we want to work on this skill, well, how could we do that? Well, actually, we could use these maths books. Then that's completely fine. You need to follow your intuition and trust that feeling, and, you know, give to your children what you're feeling is helpful and useful to them in their learning. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
And can I just point you to the question that popped up? It's an anonymous question that I've put in the chat there, just so we don't keep things moving along. Different ages, aiming for child-led autonomous learning, but find with a 4-year age gap, they have such different needs and interests and always torn or unable to manage. It can feel overwhelming, facilitating, supporting this, and also managing with chronic illnesses, which means a parent capacity is lower. Any tips there?
There's a lot there. First of all, just be really kind to yourselves, and, you know, make sure that you're giving yourself the rest that you need as much as you can, to then be able to continue to give to your children. I remember when my 4 were young, and there were times, particularly like there'd be particular seasons, like, you know, even like a year, where it just felt so crazy. You know, like when Zephan arrived, the older 3 were like 10, 9 and 6, and then we had a newborn, and it was a very difficult delivery, so I wasn't very well. And you know, there were like seasons like that in my mind where, you know, somehow we just muddled through. And, you know, at the time I probably felt like we weren't really doing enough, I wasn't really doing anything. And sometimes those are the times when the boys' learning really kind of came into its own, actually, because they would be busy doing things and I might not have been fully aware of exactly what they were all up to at different times. And yet when I look back, I can see actually some really good stuff that was happening in our home and in our relationships. And sometimes I think we don't appreciate all the good stuff that we are doing because we're kind of overwhelmed looking at stuff that we don't feel we're doing so well. And you know, when you're trying to manage multiple small people and feeling that responsibility, it can be really tough. So just be really kind to yourselves. And I remember like there'd be times when the boys would have really different interests and that feeling of not knowing how to facilitate everybody. And sometimes we would gather together around one of those projects or interests. And, you know, we'd all learn from that particular thing, even if it wasn't particularly our chosen thing at that moment. And then there'd be other times where they'd sort of be doing their own thing, different things, and then they would come together in certain ways. And really think about, you know, in your day, like what are the things that it's really important to you to that happen in the day. You know, maybe it's just you know, I want to make sure that we all sit down and have breakfast together. Or I remember at one point I really liked to do like a read aloud that we were all part of together once in the day when they were younger. And so we, in the end, we found we did that after lunch because we'd all come and sit down for lunch and then we'd have the read aloud on the back of that. Getting outside was really important with small boys. Essential, actually. I used to say they're like dogs, they need to get outside daily, and it was really a bit of a lifesaver to me to get out and have, you know, a good run around. So even if it's just, you know, one thing at a time, just building that thing in and feeling like, yeah, we did that, and then celebrating that and feeling like, yeah, we did that. And also, again, trusting that a lot of learning is happening all the time, even when we're not paying attention to it, or even when it doesn't look like we think it should look, or we might want it to look. Yeah, I hope there's some helpful stuff in that rather waffly answer. Have you got anything to add, Krish?
No, I think, you know, if you ever think that they're learning loads in school, that's just not true. They don't learn loads in school. There's a lot of dead time, but also they're, you know, in school, a lot of the time the kids are talked at. So when our kids learn, they're actually learning because they're actually doing something which is mainly sort of play related, but it's like I said, it's the play, it's the valuable conversations that you have. It's just but don't, you know, sometimes, you know, just because your kids are not doing anything because they need to relax, that's also important as well. So, you know, just sometimes they have to do that. I mean, they get tired, their brains are working hard, and then they just need to veg out, and that's okay as well. So don't feel like, oh my goodness, my kids aren't doing anything, because it's not true. They are doing things, and they just need to veg out on occasion as well. So yeah, I think Alice is right. You have to be kind to yourself and learn to kind of live a balanced life. Like if you're going at life at 200 miles per hour, your kids are going to learn something really not very good. So go at the pace that your family works at, and go with it. Because life happens, and they've got to understand that things happen in life, and the pace sometimes quickens and slows, and that's part of life. And so if you're just, they'll learn that as well.
There's a lot of learning too, isn't there, in relationships and empathy and in understanding the needs of others. So, you know, understanding that actually mum can't do this right now because she's tired and she needs to rest. Learning through our relationships with our siblings, even through fighting, right? Because you're learning to hold your position, put over your point of view, hold your corner. Like there's actually a lot of learning in all of this, which often isn't sort of measurable or valued. So yeah, I know, like with our boys, when Zephan was very new, and actually they all really stepped up in helping to take care of him, and supporting me. And the other thing I was just thinking of is that we have quite a dominant character in our house, and when he moved on, we kind of missed his ideas and his drive, and he always had ideas of things that we could be doing, and it's really interesting how the dynamics work in different families and between different siblings. And when he wasn't there anymore, the others kind of had to step up to fill that void, and it was different. And you know, seasons are different, and as children grow, things change, and they you know, they just come into their own in different ways, and the dynamics change. So yeah, sometimes there are tough seasons. I can see Juliet's put a question there which says something about challenges. What challenges did you encounter in your home ed journey? What did you find helped you through those times? And that was one of my challenges, was that just when I felt like I'd got it would change, or somebody would change, and then I'd have to like change it up. So you never quite, I remember I just never felt like I'd quite arrived. There's, you know, you're always having to level up. And that was always really challenging. So, you know, sometimes I would just feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, or not enough's happening. But then, you know, it's nice then, isn't it, for you to hear me saying with retrospect, actually, there was loads happening. And I can value all that much more now with hindsight. But it can be really challenging in the moment.
We've also got a question from Hazel. I'm at the beginning of a home ed journey with the 12-year-old. So feeling the pressure of not having as much time to get my head around things. Are they things you would avoid or do differently if you were starting out?
Oh, that's a good question as well. Great questions. What would I do differently? I used to go through stages where I would panic, and I'd like try and make a timetable and grasp, because it felt known or reassuring, and I'd be like, oh, this will make me feel more on top of things. And so I'd sort of grasp for things like that would bring more order and control. And I'm not even saying that isn't valuable, because that might actually be really helpful to you in that moment, and help you through a tough season. That could be really helpful. But I kind of wish that I could have just earlier on relaxed and gone with the flow more, and trusted myself, my intuition, and my children more. I wish I could have seen the value more in things that they were doing that I didn't really appreciate, because I was looking for other things. I was looking for learning that looked more like school had conditioned me to accept as good learning, rather than appreciating that actually learning happens in all kinds of amazing and innovative, out of the box kind of ways. In my eldest son's case, usually quite messy ways. And because now I can look at him and you know, a lot of you kind of have probably seen stuff I've shared online or pictures, and thought, oh wow. But you know, he and I he fought me out of the way so that he could learn in the way that suited him. That's what happened. And I wish I could have learned that lesson quicker, if that makes sense, Hazel, and appreciated him more as the wonderful learner that he is. Yeah, I do now, but you know, I could have learned it quicker.
like you say, I think it's the conditioning though, isn't it, of what we're used to at that time, which is obviously where I'm at the moment. So that's sort of what I know that's what I need to do, but I'm not used to doing it. So I've got my learning curve.
Yeah, and I totally hear you. And yeah, I think that we all have to go through that, because that's part of our own processing of you know, some people call that the deschooling process, don't they? It's yeah, that learning journey is ours as parents, actually, more than it's our children's, actually, because we've had longer of it, more of it to process. So it is a journey. So again, I keep saying to be kind to yourself, but do and yeah, if you can hear that from me, then yeah, that's what I would say.
I think I'd also add to, you know, Alice said, you know, the way, for example, Elias learned wasn't the way, you know, so, or maybe I should say the outcomes. So at school, our outcomes are neat little exercise books with dates and titles, and everything looks pretty nice and pretty if they're good students. But that outcome may not be suitable for the kids that we're home educating. So think about what their outcomes might look like. So are they, maybe they don't want to write, maybe they want to do a vlog, or maybe they want to do a video, or maybe they just want to build something, or what does their outcome look like? So I mean, I think it's good. I think talking to your children about what you want to achieve is a good thing, so that they have a kind of goal, and you can then ask them, you know, how's it going, where are you at, and so on. So I think that's good. But it's not going to look like the stuff that schoolwork looks like. It may be completely different. I taught just over a year ago. I taught in a school which basically was for school refusers, or children that mainstream school really didn't suit, and I had to think about creative ways of doing history. So one of the children loved horrible histories, so we just decided to do horrible history skits, and that was brilliant, because they learned so much, and we got the green screen out, and they learned how to edit videos and do special effects. So they were not only were they learning history, they had to do a bit of research to actually do the film anyway. So they'd got all that. So just think about more creative ways of how learning can look like, because it doesn't have to look like a neat exercise book. In fact, you know, doing a video is amazing, because you can video edit, do special effects. They're learning about loads of IT skills. So brilliant. Do that then. Just kind of think outside the box.
I was reading the other day about how in Indigenous cultures, children learn a lot by playing with the tools of the culture. And Peter Gray, if you've read his book, Free to Learn, he talks about how that applies in our culture, to what are the tools of our culture. And it honestly staggers me how our children use technology. And of course they do, right? Because they look at the tools of the culture and they want to become proficient. They want to become able in that mode. And it, you know, they're way ahead of me, way ahead, and in a great way, you know, because I look at them and I'm like, wow, what are you doing? Show me. And I struggle to keep up. But that's good, because their children are always kind of at the cutting edge of culture, and they're creating it and shaping it. And so yeah, some of the way that Zeph, our youngest, creates using technology is just fantastic. And you know, may our eyes be open to see it and, you know, celebrate it, because it's inspiring. And I love what Johanna's put in the chat as well. In fact, there's some great comments in the chat, so do read through about how sometimes it takes time, doesn't it, for things just to be processed in our brains and for things to filter through. And I'm trying to do my master's at the moment, which is a bit of a challenge, shall we say. But I'm like really conscious that I can be reading stuff and I'm trying to like process it, and it just takes time away from the screen. Even if I'm out for a walk, and things will just like settle in my brain, and then I'll get clarity and I'm like, oh, I remember visiting, if you've been to Bletchley Park where the code breakers worked during the war, and there's a beautiful lake and a green area outside, because they were encouraged to go out and just have a walk, because people understood that it needed that time and space and being outside for things to just kind of land and have those mental breakthroughs. And often we don't appreciate that, do we? Just the time when our kids might be just thinking or kind of mulling things over, and actually in those times that look unproductive, they might be having the most amazing things happening in their brains. So that's a really good point. I love the comments that you've all been making in the chat.
Are there any more questions? If not, I've got one.
Can I just quickly say
Yes,
about
go.
Bletchley Park? Because what I found really interesting about that was that it said something like it was the first example of where they just took a load of people that they felt from all different walks of life that could work on this and put them in a space together and didn't tell them what to do. So almost like the complete opposite of school, but just kind of went, okay, you look, go in there, work this out. And I just loved the whole kind of concept of that. Very kind of home ed, really. Like, there you go, solve this problem, work. Yeah, and it worked.
Yeah.
And it's such a good method, isn't it? Because it's one of those things where the problem is, obviously the problem's not easy. There is no answer. They've got to like figure it out. So it's often and I think you have to, it teaches them a lot of resilience and stickability and things. Often just as a contrast, school where they're expected to get the answer, whether it's maths or whatever it is, in 2 or 3 minutes if it's a long question, whereas no, it took years. It took years to figure out, and often, I don't know how. Was it the Enigma Code or whatever? What was the film? But it's just a really, really good story about what actually happened. But they have to like take breaks and mull over it and come back to it and approach it in a different way. And that is how real life problems work. And I think that's brilliant. Like, why not give them problems that they could, none of us know the answer to?
I'm just seeing Sandrine, welcome. I know you came in a bit late and we did kind of address your question a bit earlier. So you might just want to watch back on the recording about maths games and ideas, but also I'll tag you in a video on my organic education page as well that's really relevant to that. So because I know we're running a bit short of time, so hopefully that will be helpful. Stacey's saying about the LA. Yeah, don't worry about filling out LA reports. Never make that your primary framework for the education that you're providing, because even in this brief time that we've had together, we've talked about so much learning that happens, which doesn't always fit into neat boxes, but is there and is happening. And so there will always be a way, and there's lots of support as well online for framing things for the LA in a way that's acceptable. But I always feel like we just need to be really confident about what we are doing. And as Krish says, it was really helpful actually when he used to be teaching and he'd come in at the end of the day and I'd feel like, oh, we haven't really done very much. And he'd be like, what do you think we've done at the school? It was this and it was that and it was chaos. And you know, like we're doing great things with our children. And I mean, how many children get the privilege, the amazing opportunity to have a kind of personalized, tailor-made education? It's really desirable, and it's really a great thing. And so I just always feel like we need to be really confident about that, and confident in communicating that to the LA, and not be kind of cowed by the power dynamic of that, but to just feel confident in sharing positively what we're doing for our children.
Yeah, and the other thing is don't be intimidated by the LA or by teachers, because you know the chances are that your, for example, your math teacher isn't actually a math specialist. And which is true, but they don't, you know, teachers don't know everything, and we've got to, as parents, we've got to give ourselves credit. Like, yeah, we don't know everything, but we know how to help our kids learn how to learn, so that's enough. And if we don't know the answer ourselves, we're going to find out as well. So what better way is there than that? So I just think we've got, you know, I think as home educating parents, we are developing our superpowers, and you've got to understand that these are superpowers that I hope in time people will look back on and think, oh wow, those guys had the right idea. So let's see.
I think there was, who said they've got a question? One more quick one before we have to wrap up.
I was going to just quickly say, were you both on the same view? I know you call it unschooling, but that from the start, or was there a journey you took together to get to the square where you went, actually, no, this is the right thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think we were on the right page. But it had been a bit of a journey up to that point, because we'd actually lived abroad when our boys were small, and that had been an experience, a kind of family adventure where we'd gone off the sort of set script, so to speak, and our boys had missed the beginning of their formal schooling here, and so I do think that family adventure was almost like, you know, the prelude to the leap into home education and to kind of unschooling. And I think because we'd had that journey together and we had seen the ways that our boys adapted and learned, that we kind of were together in the decision, and felt like that was the kind of educational pathway that we wanted to continue to shape. So yeah, when we actually made the decision to deregister them and take them out of school, which was, they'd only done 4 terms when we came back, yeah, we were kind of both on the same page that we wanted a sort of child-centered approach that sprung from their questions and their interests. Yeah, okay. And
you've got another question.
Yeah. Could we quickly squeeze it in? I think we can.
Yes.
How are our parents about home ed?
Oh, well, I think my parents were very skeptical. They just didn't get it. But we just had to stand firm, and it is difficult to stand firm, but you just have to stand firm and just be like, no, we're doing this anyway. Whether you approve or not, either you want to support us or just leave us to do what we need to do. On the other hand, Alice's parents didn't get it either, because not, you know, how can we expect our parents to get it? But over time, they understood what it was all about, because they were much more involved in that journey. So, in fact, you know, Alice's mum's very arty, so she did a lot of art with our children, and Alice's dad loves history, so anything to do with history, Alice's dad is involved in that. So, and that would involve trips away and trips out and bringing history back to life. So you do, yeah, you do have to use your if your parents are supportive, use your parents, but also use other people in your community too, because it doesn't have to be you. There could be I mean, Elias used to go to a neighbor. Elias and I used to go to a neighbor who was almost like a mad scientist, and we'd talk about bubbles
And other
all
things.
morning and other things. So why are they circular, and what is a bubble? And it's why has it got rainbows on its skin? So just things like that. Helping minds be curious, asking lots of questions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's great. If you watch the BBC doc, you'll see my dad feature, which he was quite chuffed about. It did take them a while to get it, but one of the great benefits for them has been the amount of time they've been able to spend with the boys, and the relationship they've built, the input they've been able to have in their education, which they've really embraced. But yeah, initially they were skeptical, and my mum was a teacher her whole career as well, so it's a lot, isn't it, for you think about our deschooling process, and for our parents too. There's people are so conditioned into one way of doing education, that to ask people to kind of look beyond that is a big thing for them as well.
I think as well, there was always that fear that if you weren't educated correctly, you wouldn't be successful, and they carry that with them, don't they? So there's that nurturing thing still as parents, that they're thinking, oh no, because they've not seen the outcome yet.
Yeah.
We've got one more question about GCSEs and exams, and what is your philosophy on that?
Oh, that is a big question. Sandrine, are you there on Saturday? She's not got her microphone on. I was going to say I'll sit down and have lunch with you.
Yes, she was. Yes, she is.
Yes, we'll talk about that on Saturday, because we've run out of time, and it's a big question.
Yeah, sorry, I was late. I was at the other meeting.
Oh, no, that's okay. Nice that you could join us briefly.
No, there's the one thing that just goes round and round in my head. I'm very much if I used to be a secondary school teacher, and I'm continuously deschooling myself and recovering from my own school trauma, both as a student and as a teacher. But it's really, really hard. And not only you've got this background, sort of like record playing, like people have said in the chat about, how am I going to write my local authority report, etc., etc. And then you've got this constant record playing about exams, GCSEs, what do we do about those? Quite frankly, I'd rather just, not operate from worrying about those things. But they're very real concerns in this day and age, and in this society, that manufactured society that we live in. So it's really hard to kind of, make that philosophical shift away from that.
Yeah, it is. And anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows that I'm fundamentally opposed to any form of standardized testing. Having said that, my 3 older children all chose to sit GCSEs. So it's a really interesting conversation. But the thing that, even though they're there in our society, and, they are what they are, we are not tied to timescale. We don't have to do as many as are done in school. Like, there's all sorts of ways you can flex.
Yeah, there was a talk yesterday. Sorry, there was a talk yesterday that where we addressed this. So there may be a recording from yesterday's talk about GCSEs that you might want to play back. But yeah, like Alice said, you can do it incrementally. So just briefly, Noah did, our 17-year-old now, he did one GCSE when he was 13, just to get him used to the idea of what a GCSE exam looks like, and then he did subsequent GCSEs when he was ready and saw fit. But we weren't tied, you know, it was always a negotiation with him about, do you want to take this GCSE? I think Noah got 5 GCSEs in the end, but
6, he did 6 in the end.
6, sorry. And we always say, well, what do you want to, we were always like working backwards from what his end goal was. And then we're okay, well, you want to do sports coaching, well,
What do you
these
need?
maths and English were kind of musts, but then there was a bit of flexibility about what the other 3 would be.
Mm.
But yeah,
Even that, people take different approaches, you know, functional skills, and you know, you certainly don't have to take them at 16, do you?
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm really aware that our time's up, and I don't want to keep people, including Susanna, if you need to go. But thank you so much for joining us.
I'll catch you on Saturday about it.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
bigger conversation. Yeah, you can have it.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
That was absolutely brilliant. And if you're coming on Saturday, we will see you on Saturday. Thank you so much. Take care,
Thanks
everyone.
for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.